Graham, Sally Yates, the former acting attorney general, is actually at a hearing right now, and of course she hasn't gotten to speak yet because every senator gets to go through and give their spiel before they get to her and start asking specific questions about General Flynn and all of that. So we don't really have any breaking news from that hearing just yet, but we'll let you know when we do. Right now, we're honored to welcome in Thomas Spoehr, who's the director of the Center for National Defense at the Heritage Foundation. And Mr. Spoehr, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Mark, for having me.
Oh, I appreciate it. You know, there was lots of talk about the omnibus bill that passed last week that included extra money for defense spending, even though it's probably less than what the president and some of the people in the military wanted. Is that a step in the right direction?
Yeah, it really is. So you're right. They didn't get everything they asked for, but they got a lot of good stuff. They got aircraft. They got another ship or two. They got money for extra personnel. So it really is a win for the military, and we'd like to see that continue through the years now.
Yeah, but they've got some limitations on what they can do at this point. Is that correct in terms of military spending? Are there some caps that were put in there? And did that have anything to do with the sequestration from a couple years ago?
Yeah, and so what happened, Mark, is in 2011, it's been 6 years now, they passed this Budget Control Act, which limited the amount of money that they can spend on defense and other discretionary programs. So in order to kind of avoid that problem or to escape that, they provided this money in what's called Overseas Contingency Operations Funds, or OCO funding. That money is not subject to the caps, and so they are able to increase defense funding with that kind of money.
Yeah, interesting. They found a way around it, in other words, right?
Exactly, yeah. And they've done this. This isn't the first time they've done it. They did this the last couple of years. It's really just kind of a sleight-of-hand budget maneuver because they can't reach agreement on the bigger kind of issues that are facing the budget.
Right. Plus, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know you're not a budget analyst necessarily, but by only having continuing resolutions and omnibus bills through much of the Obama administration, that there really wasn't a single budget put in place, which made it a little more difficult to control some of these costs. And you would think that Budget Control Act would do just that. It would control the budget, but we're still $20 trillion in debt.
Yeah, I mean, the dilemma is even though we passed this Budget Control Act, spending is still going out through the roof, and that's as a result of entitlement programs and interest on the debt. So even though they've managed to clamp down to some degree on defense and other discretionary spending, that hadn't helped the overall federal government picture, which, as you say, I think we're at $18 trillion and going up every year.
Wow. I know there are a group of Republicans, about 140 of them, that have called for a change in the way this is done. Now, would that actually be part of budget negotiations for the next year, or is it something they could do before that?
Well, Mark, what they've done is one of the representatives, Mike Turner, has put in a piece of legislation which would remove the Budget Control Act, would rescind it. But his legislation wants to rescind it just for defense spending. And the Budget Control Act applies to all the discretionary spending of the federal government. So it could be done, but I don't think they're going to get approval on this piece of legislation. They've only got, about 60% of the Republicans. I don't think they have a single Democrat signed on to this thing, and the Democrats probably are not going to sign on to a bill that just relaxes the caps on defense spending. They're going to want to see spending, relaxed on other areas like education, labor, environment, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Let me ask you from a readiness perspective, because these numbers can kind of get overwhelming when you talk about it like that. But from a readiness perspective, we've got, I'm told, half of our battle groups are over there off the coast of Korea right now. Are we really hamstrung as a military in terms of our ability to respond and react to crises around the globe because of this hampering of the military over the past 7 or 8 years?
Yeah, it's even gone back further than that, Mark. Maybe about the time we started with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, have really kind of diverted the focus of the Department of Defense and taken our money. And so all the money we spent to for Iraq and Afghanistan didn't help our military improve its capabilities. They've still got the same equipment, essentially, that they had when they started the wars. And so, it's still got the best military in the world, but it is under a lot of strain and stress right now. You're correct that most of our Navy that we have is over there in the Pacific right now because of the crisis there, and if we had to do something else, our military would be in tough shape to kind of respond elsewhere in the globe.
Yeah, that's the bottom line for me, and I hope that they have some impact on this moving forward. And there's a little bit of budgetary sense added to it. I don't know what the odds are of that. But, Mr. Spoehr, thanks so much for your time. I'll direct people to the Heritage Foundation at heritage.org to read some more of your thoughts on that. Thank you.
And thank you, Mark.
Yep, have a great day. Thanks. So there you have it. They've increased spending a little bit. They need a lot more. They're trying to lift some of these caps. I hope, the Budget Control Act that I would write would say we can't spend more than we have. So we're going to have to prioritize where this money's going. And nobody in Washington would like that. They would kick me out after one term. That you need these are the parameters. This is the amount of cash you have. What, $18-19 trillion in debt? We can't afford to spend more than we take in every year, but we continue to do it. It's really kind of sad, isn't it? One other thing that I promised to get to this hour that I hadn't had a chance to yet. Professor Alan Sachs, in that last segment, brought up this sanctuary law in Texas. And I want to get to that real quick because I think this is important. Here's Governor Abbott on the bill that he passed this morning. Hold on, Liz. Let me figure out what I've got playing here because there's something playing in the background on my computer, and nobody wants to hear that. So I think I've fixed that problem. Here's Texas Governor Greg Abbott on the bill that he signed this morning.
This law effectively bans sanctuary cities in the state of Texas. What it means is that no county, no city, no governmental body in the state of Texas can adopt any policy that provides sanctuary. Second, what it means is that law enforcement officials such as sheriffs are going to be required to comply with ICE detainer requests. What this law is going to do is to engender greater cooperation between local law enforcement and federal officials so that we ensure that everybody is going to be simply following the law.
But there's nothing special about this law. It doesn't ask them to do anything more than the law requires. But it says if you don't do at least what the law requires, we're going to come after you. And I'd love to see every state in the nation adopt this same language. Listen.
Right. First, by them not complying, what that would mean is they have adopted a policy that promotes sanctuary city policies, which means that they would be not complying with the law. If they do promote sanctuary city policies, what it means is they could be subject to jail time. It means they could be subject to being removed from office. It means that their city or county could be subject to fines and penalties of up to $25,000 per day.
Amen. I'm telling you what, they've got it going on in Texas.